If you already have a logo file to work with, feel free to skip this video. However, I'm going to show you a couple tips that could be handy down the road, no matter what you're working on. So what I'm going to do is I just took a picture of a fake signature on a white piece of paper. I just drew it out with a Sharpie marker. I used my iPhone to take the photo, and this is the photo I got from that. Pretty basic, pretty simple. So feel free to draw out your logo or sketch your name or whatever you want to do, but just make it simple, make it quick. So what I'm going to do with this is go ahead and grab that photo I just took and shared. I actually used the AirDrop on a Mac, but you can email it to yourself or text it to yourself, whatever you want to do. I'm going to drag that photo file right over my Photoshop icon. I'm assuming as a graphic designer, you probably have access to Photoshop. If you don't, you can probably do something similar in whatever design software you use. But here's what I'm going to do. I've got my layer here. I'm going to hit Command J to jump cut that into a second layer here. I'm going to click back on that background layer and I'm going to fill it with a bright green. I'll hit Alt Delete to fill it with this foreground color I already had. So now when I make these changes, I can see what happens. The first thing I'm going to do is bring up my levels. So the shortcut for that is Command L for levels. I'm going to bring up my whites quite a bit, and I'm going to bring down my darks to really crunch that back down. And you know, I could leave it up a little bit because I kind of like that I can see some of the texture of the marker in here. It actually looks kind of cool. So maybe I'll back that down a little bit and bring my whites up even more. And I'll show you how this can work for you in just a moment. So once you get that where you're kind of happy, click OK. And now what I'm going to do is double click on the layer. Now don't click on the name and don't click on the thumbnail. Kind of click off to the side here. And this is going to open up your layer style. And this little slider, this blend if, is where all the magic's going to happen. So we're taking this current layer, the one that's got my fake signature on it, and we're going to scrub it left a little bit, and it's going to hide any of the lighter tones. And I could do the same with the darks if I wanted to. In this case, I could scrub away the dark tones and now the black hides. But what I want is this black signature on top. So I'm going to drag it, and you can see if I zoom in over here that I still have a little bit of white around the edges. Now this doesn't matter too much for what we're about to do next, but if you wanted to blend that even more, I can hold down the Alt key and click and drag on this white slider, and it'll start to kind of pull out the whites but leave some of the grays behind. So you can see I kind of get that washed out look where that green comes through. So you might like that for your signature. It just depends on what you're going for. I'm going to click OK. And now technically that's just a layer style. It didn't actually cut away the white. So the way I know that is if I were to apply like a drop shadow or something, click OK. If I move this to the side, it applies a drop shadow to that whole picture. Well, we don't want it to do that. What I want to do is add another layer right above this fake signature layer. I'm going to hold down the Command key to select both of them. That's the Control key on a PC. And now what I'm going to do is come up to Layer, Merge Layers. That's Command E. And now what it's done is it's basically smashed those two layers together, but anything that was transparent, it actually cut away. So now if I apply a drop shadow, you'll see it actually follows the signature, which is great. I don't want to add a drop shadow though, but what I do want to do, this is where it's really cool, is I can now change the color of this thing. Let me show you how. If I click on this little lock transparency button, I'll click on that. Now I'll only be able to affect any of the actual pixels that have content in them, but it won't touch anything that's transparent. So here's how this is helpful. Let's say you want to change the color to something else. Anything else. I'll click on any kind of color, get my foreground that way, and I'm going to hit Alt Delete, and it fills the foreground, and it only fills the pixels that have pixel data. So that's what this lock does. So you can easily change the color, or maybe you wrote it in a blue Sharpie because that's all you could find. Well, you could click and drag down here, make it, or fill your foreground color with black, and now I'll hit Alt Delete again to fill my foreground with black. So the only thing I need to do now is straighten this out. So I have my rulers on, hit Command R if you don't see them, or go to View and turn on your rulers. So I can drag a guide down. I'm going to click on this layer and kind of get it close. I'll hit Command T or Control T on a PC, and I'll drag this little anchor point right up here. So now when I turn or curve this, I can put it on a straight line. So there's your signature. We're ready to go. Now I got to do is just export this. So what I'm going to do now is turn off this background layer. And I'm going to come up here to Image, down to Trim. And I actually created this custom shortcut, so you probably won't see that because I use this shortcut all the time. But click on Trim, and now what I can do is trim away top, bottom, left, and right pixels based on transparent pixels. So anything that's transparent, it'll trim it to that. So if I click OK, it'll trim it all the way down to here. Now there must be something down here that I can't see with my own eye. So what I'm going to do is just hit the letter M to get my marquee selection, and I'll click and drag about like that, and I'll hit the delete key, and I'll click and drag. I just hit Command D real quick to deselect. I'll click and drag down here and hit the delete key one more time, making sure I do that on this layer. I'll hit Command D. Let's try that image trim shortcut again. There we go. And now it trimmed it back down. So now what we need to do is just export this so we can actually use it. Now if I look at this though, and we look at my ruler, I can see this image is about 1200 pixels wide. So that's going to be huge. Let's jump back over to our website real quick. And if I want it to be about this big, I'm just going to take a screenshot, Command Shift and then number 4. I'll click and drag. So if my logo was about this size, I can see it's about 166 pixels wide by 55 pixels tall. So I'm just going to get this other one in that ballpark. So let's do it about 150 pixels wide. I'll hit the C key to get my crop tool. I'm going to come up here and change it to 150 pixels by, I'm just going to hit delete because I don't care how tall it is. I just want it to be as tall as the logo. And I'm going to crunch this up a little bit, crunch this down a little bit, and I'll hit the return key. And let's take a look at what's going on up here. Okay, so I still have this pixel data up here. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to put 72 for 72 pixels per inch. I'll hit return one more time. There we go. Now I'm going to hit Command and the number 1 key. It's the same as going to View and then 100%, just so I can see how big that turned into. Okay, great. So now we're good to go. Now I just got to export it. So what I'm going to do is go to File, down to Export, and I'll just do a quick export as a PNG file because it supports transparency. We'll call this logo, and I'll just throw it right on my desktop so it's easy to find when I upload this. Now I want to show you one more tip or trick when you're working with web graphics. I found this cool site called TinyPNG, and what it does is it will compress your images. So if I go to my desktop and I look at that logo file I just exported, right now it's only 4 kilobytes, which is tiny, and that's awesome. So really, I'm not going to get this much smaller, but if it was a big header image or if your logo maybe was a little bit of a bigger file, you can drop this right in here and it's going to compress it. And you can see it actually still made it about half as big, which is awesome because now it'll load even faster. It'll be one of the first things to load on my website. So I've got that logo ready to go. I'm going to jump back over to my website. We'll go to the dashboard, down to Salient, down to the header navigation. We'll turn back on the logo for my site, and let's go ahead and upload it right here. Now here is where I would take the time to put in alt text. This helps for your search engine optimization. It helps Google and other search engines find your site. So you could just name it, put your name in there or whatever you want, but this will help you get found when people search for your site. So if you continue to do this as you upload images, this will help you in the long run. I'll click select, and there's my base logo, and I'm actually going to upload the exact same one for my Retina logo as well. And let's jump back into Photoshop real quick. I'm going to hit Command A to highlight the whole canvas. And if I go to Window, down to Info, it'll open up my info palette here, and I can see that the width is 150 and the height is 70. So if I wanted to, I could cut that in half and have this be my full Retina version, or I could make another version that's 300 pixels wide by 140 pixels tall, and then have it do the math for me. But for right now, for the sake of just getting this done, I'm going to leave it alone. I'll hit Save Changes, and let's just see how this looks. All right, so there's my signature. And again, you can see it's pretty small. So let's jump back over here and change that logo height to 70. Now that I know that it's 70 pixels tall, I'll hit Save Changes. I'll jump back over here and hit Command R to refresh my page. And there it is. There's my custom signature, and it's looking good. Now there's one more thing I want to show you. If you're on any other website, you'd probably be done at this point. But the Salient theme actually supports multiple versions of a logo. And the reason why, if I were to click down here on any of these portfolio items, you'll see that a couple things are going on. One, it has a huge header image, which we'll talk about in the next lecture, how to make these. But you'll also notice the logo up here. The old Salient logo is still there. And here's why. If I jump back into the Salient theme and I come back under Salient down to header navigation, and then I click on this transparency tab, the navigation has transparency support. And when the nav is transparent, it gives you a couple options for more logos. So this would be my starting logo. So when you first get to a page, what's showing up here? And in this case, it's a white Salient logo. Then when it gets dark, what's it going to be? And I had already uploaded these. So these are the dark version. So what I need to do is create a white or light version of my logo for pages like this. Real simple to do. I'm going to jump back into Photoshop. I've got this layer selected. I'm just going to make sure that I still have that transparency locked. I'll hit the letter D to get my default color swatches over here. I'm going to hit the letter X to swap, so that way my foreground color is in front. You could also just click these little arrows right here to swap it. Now I'm going to do is hit Alt, Delete, and now my logo is in white. So I'm going to go ahead and save this out real quick. We'll go to File. We'll go down to Export, Quick Export as PNG, and we'll call this logo-white. And then we'll come back into our web page, back to the Salient menu, and let's go ahead and upload the white version real quick. We'll go to my desktop. We'll throw that in there. And again, give it some alt text. All right, and now let's upload it for the Retina version as well. We'll save our changes, jump back over into our front page here. We'll reload it. There we go. That looks great. And that's pretty much it. So in the next video, let's take a look at how we can customize the typography and the colors to start making this match our brand.